Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. It's so good to have you with us today. I wonder whether I can just ask you a few questions, if that's okay. So the first question I wanted to ask you was, like, in your role, you work with a lot of Christian women across the globe. What are some of the issues that you encounter when you do work with women across the world?
Well, it's a great privilege to work across so many different cultures and contexts. I guess I encounter a lot of women who serve faithfully and who, a lot of them would love to do more, who they feel called to do more, but perhaps they feel they're held back. They might lack confidence, or they might actually be held back by regulations in their church context. They want to know the Bible. They want to know what it says about gifting and using their talents and skills. And I think one of the sadnesses I feel is that we have this great untapped, not totally untapped, but not fully utilized and used and celebrated resource in the church. When you think that over half the church is women, and the percentages are not always accurate, but most people say that over 60% of the church is women, and we need to be using them and celebrating them and acknowledging them just the way God created them.
That's great. And so why do you think that is an issue?
Well, it's an issue for a couple of reasons. I guess for lots of us, especially in the West, it's an issue because it's in our faces the whole time in the media about women and women's rights and Me Too and abortion and gender issues. It just goes on and on. And as Christians, we sometimes pull back and we don't want to deal with those things because we think that they're very worldly. And because they are often filled with very strong speech and language, and we don't want to engage with that. But on another level, there is within the church, within Christian circles, within Christian homes, there are real issues which have nothing to do with what society is saying, but really are just about what men and women are made for and how God created us. And the fact that because we live in a world that isn't perfect, that, is full of sin and wrongdoing and selfishness, the most basic of relationships sometimes get distorted. And that's what happens outside the church, but also sadly inside the church, because we're not perfect.
And that brings us on to the book that you're putting together. Tell us a little bit about that. What does the book explore? What does it touch on?
Yeah, well, there's lots of books out there about these issues. There's lots of really Bible-based books, and there's lots of verses that people pull out to argue one way or the other. And somehow there are lots and lots of Christians who still are confused, who want to know how we can get around and over some of the issues so that we're working together effectively within families and marriages, but also within churches, as single people, as married people working with other people. And so we wanted to be a bit creative in the way we looked at the issue. Rather than just tackling the stuff that divides us, we thought we'd come at it from what God's design and plan might be, his overall narrative, if you like, about relationships with men and women and between men and women. And then lots of times when I'm talking to people, the things that really engage them are the stories of things going wrong, the stories of things going right, the stories of amazing things that women are doing. And so we're going to tell in the book 8 different stories from around the world as well. So we've got 13 different people contributing, men and women, young and old, from 13 different countries, and 9 different languages. So it's a real mix of church and national culture and church tradition. So we hope that means it's not totally Western, it's not totally female, it's not totally male, and it really does dip into lots of very practical issues as well as the biblical ones.
That's great. And I was going to ask you, who is this book for? But it sounds like it's for anyone. Is that true?
I guess it's for anyone who's interested in the issue, who maybe is confused, maybe knows something but doesn't know a lot. Maybe they've been told things about women and men, but they've never actually explored it for themselves, or they've never actually heard some good preaching on it. I think we make a lot of assumptions about this topic. We pull out one or two Bible verses and we use those as our shield whenever we're asked about the question, but we never actually sit back and think about it holistically. And we never, well, not never's a strong word, but we're reluctant to listen to other points of view. And I think that's because we're afraid that we don't want to go outside the Bible, but also we're afraid that if we let go on this issue, are we being unchristian? Are we being unbiblical? But when we actually sit down and look at the Bible and think about it carefully, and really dig into it, it's exciting. It's exciting what it says about the possibilities for men and women.
That's great. And what do you think it actually takes, in your opinion, for men and women to work in unity together?
Well, they should obviously do what I tell them. But apart from that, I think it's looking at the Bible again thoroughly, because a lot of people that I work with, they really hold the Bible in high esteem, and that's fantastic. But it is surprising how little we really do understand some of the stories, some of the events, some of the instructions, some of the culture in the Bible. And so to delve into it and not be afraid that, you know, we're going to be doubtful about our faith, or, you know, that God will be annoyed that we're doubting what he's saying. And secondly, I think listening to each other. I think we're so used to men speaking in many contexts in our lives, whether it's in business, whether it's in church, and we don't often hear women's voices. So I think that listening to women and men and girls and boys, and valuing equally those voices, is really important. So often I'm told that if we take these steps, won't that mean that women are taking over, and that, you know, that means that my position will be under threat as a man? And that's not what it's about at all. So listening, rediscovering the Bible, mutual submission, acknowledging that I've got gifts, you've got gifts, that's fantastic, let's work with each other. I'm good at some things, I'm hopeless at other things, and that's not because I'm a woman or a man, it's just because I'm a person and God made me that way. And I think the last thing would be to recognize that we've all got our blinkers, we've all got our social background, we've all got our culture, we've all got the things that our mums and dads did right and wrong that we want to avoid or copy. And we do need to say to God, are we really listening to your way of doing things? Are we radical in being transformed in our marriages, in our parenting, in our church leadership?
Wow, that was a great answer. Well done. And because I know that's what I mean, you're probably an expert in that, and you've got a lot of wisdom to offer. I guess my next question would be, what are your hopes for the next generation of girls and women in God's kingdom? Like, what does that look like for you? If you could dream a world for girls and women growing up in the next generation, what would that look like?
I'd love to think that they could be confident as women and girls, that they wouldn't, like I did when I was growing up. I sometimes wished I was a boy, because they seem to have all the power and all the fun and, you know, get out and be able to do things. I grew out of that, but I hope that girls and boys would be happy in their skin, because they both know that they're loved and appreciated and created by God, and that there's none of this rubbish about girls being better or worse, or that we're just different, but in many ways we're the same. We're both gifted, we're both created in his image. And I guess I would hope that girls and women in sort of social aspects wouldn't have to fear violence, or domestic abuse, that they wouldn't have to fear emotional abuse, that they wouldn't have to fear that they're going to always be poorer than men. And so they're social things. And then I guess within the Christian context, I would hope that, and this obviously won't ever happen perfectly until, we're all, Jesus comes again. But I hope that the church would recognize that they've got these fabulously gifted young women and girls who have so much to contribute. They're so well educated and they want to serve. And I know that in Victorian times and early in the 20th century, women who felt frustrated would go off to the mission field overseas, to Asia or Africa. And they would be given amazing responsibility in those situations, which they would never have had if they were back home. And I would love for us all to see everywhere where we are as an amazing mission field where we can all contribute and lead and serve equally. And I don't think that's an impossible ask, because we're all spirit-filled. We're all striving to be like Jesus. And so we've just got to leave some of that baggage behind. And I think we can do it. I see lots of amazing young women. So I'm hopeful.
That's good. I am as well. And I think these conversations are really important to be able to, shed light on some issues that maybe some of us are aware of, but others are not aware of, because the only way we change culture is by having conversations and challenging it. Amanda, thank you so much for chatting with us and sharing your wisdom and sharing about the new book that you're helping to put together. It's been really, really great chatting to you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.